UFC Fight Night Atlanta, Usman versus Buckley takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Jamey-Lyn Horth versus Venessa Demopoulous. I'm going to go with Jamey-Lyn Horth here. She actually looks like there was a moment in her Veronica Hardy fight where I was looking at Veronica Hardy and I was thinking, okay, Veronica Hardy is the more technical fighter here, but Jamey-Lyn Horth has a physicality advantage over her. But there were moments in that fight from Jamey-Lyn Horth, and even in her last fight as well, where I saw her fighting and I thought, hang on a minute, somebody's held pads for her before. You know what I mean? There was actually a moment in the fight where I watched her compete and I thought, there's somebody, do they know that they've been letting, like, her... I don't know if when the commissioner should come in for women's MMA when they spot that someone's actually been training MMA. And it was a shocking moment in Jamey-Lyn Horth's fight where she threw something and I thought, this isn't the first time that she's tried that. You know, she's definitely been hitting a heavy bag at the bare minimum. And I think if she's been doing that, that'll put her over whatever Venessa Demopoulous has been doing for her entire career, because she goes out there and has no idea what she's doing in most of her fights. And I know what you're saying. How can you pick her to lose? It's only happened 7 times. But, you know, I think Venessa Demopoulous is going to lose. Shock. You know what I mean? A real twist. I'm going with Jamey-Lyn Horth. She's too physical. She uses her physicality in fights a lot. And she's 5'7" to Venessa Demopoulous is 5'2". You know, more reach than her, more leg reach than her to work with as well. I mean, Venessa Demopoulous is just going to be a little bit too small and undersized in this one, and I can see Jamey-Lyn Horth implementing her physicality advantage over her and out-grappling her towards the distance. 30-27 to Jamey-Lyn Horth. Venessa Demopoulous spent 13 minutes of a 15-minute fight in her last fight on bottom position, so I'm going to side with Jamey-Lyn Horth to get this one done by decision using that physicality. But before we move on up the card, this video is sponsored by prizepicks.com. New users, play $5, get $50 instantly if you use code GURU. You have to use code GURU to benefit me while you do this. But yeah, new users, if you want to sign up, play $5, get $50 to use instantly if you use code GURU. And also, when it comes to what I'm going to go for here, I'm going to say that Masur Abdul-Malik will fight for less than 5.5 minutes of fight time against Cody Brundage, because I think there's going to be a first round finish. And I also think that Ange Loosa is going to land less than 69.5 significant strikes against Phillip Rowe, because there's that's too much of a high significant strike count to account for all of the other ways a fight could possibly finish early. 69.5, I'm taking less than 69.5 significant strikes for Ange Loosa in his fight. And I'm going to say that if Malcolm Wellmaker lands anywhere near 27.5 significant strikes against Kris Moutinho, he's probably going to have taken his head off. So I'm going to say that Malcolm Wellmaker lands less than 27.5 significant strikes in his win. Put down 20, you get back 120 for that. So best of luck and do it responsibly. We get back to the video at hand and move on up the card to Phillip Rowe versus Ange Loosa. I just discussed it. I think that this could end in a finish early. I could also see that. I could see this in a world being some kind of decision win. But I'm going to go with Phillip Rowe getting a finish over Ange Loosa. Ange Loosa, here's the problem I have with him. I think he's a very well-trained fighter. And he's got everything. But it's just, the guy just seems manipulatable. Anyone can enforce what they want on Ange Loosa. And I mean within UFC welterweight terms, by the way. But anyone seems like they can just enforce whatever they want on Ange Loosa at any given time in the fight. He constantly seems to be covered up with his back against the cage. And if you look at Phillip Rowe's, I'm burping up a storm. If you look at Phillip Rowe's career, he doesn't have many like astounding moments. And quite often you do see him go to a decision that you don't think he should have gone to. But with his range, there often comes times when he has opponents up against the cage and he's able to do something where you're like, okay, this is really good work from him, you know? When he finally gets an opponent up against the cage, you did it to Nico Price in their fight in the 3rd round. He's done it to other opponents as well. Phillip Rowe's like, you're not going to drag him into some kind of war, and it's going to be a little bit of an intricate fight that goes on. So I think this is going to be a slow pace, but Ange Loosa just seems so physically manhandleable to anyone. Like, I think Neil Magny would unironically just drag Ange Loosa to a decision loss, 30-27. I just, with Ange Loosa, it just seems to be with every opponent that he runs into, there comes a time when he's just not doing anything back that makes them worried whatsoever. There's an AJ Fletcher matchup where he did quite good, and there's another matchup in his career where he did quite good as well, but they weren't the most physical of welterweights out there. And when it comes to everyone else in the welterweight division who seems to be quite big for the division or rangy for the division, it just seems like Ange Loosa has been nerfed, and it's like unfair to him that he's even in a fight with them. Like, JDM was just like working new stuff out on him on the Contender Series, and I even look at like the fight that he had with Munir Lazez and some of the other matchups that he's had. Even his fight with Reese McGee got really, really dangerous for him at certain points, and it really shouldn't have been that dangerous. He was able to out-wrestle early. I don't think he out-wrestles Phillip Rowe early here. But it just seems to be always the case that someone is able to just get Ange Loosa in a terrible, terrible situation in a fight. Even against AJ Fletcher, like AJ Fletcher really had him in real bad trouble. So I just don't think Ange Loosa has the power to hurt anyone. So he's durable-ish, but when does that run out? I'm going to go with Phillip Rowe getting this one done up against the cage. I think he'll be able to push Ange Loosa there and do work on him there. And eventually maybe Ange Loosa might shoot in a bad takedown, get Darce choked. Something along those lines is what I'm thinking here for Phillip Rowe. We move on. Up the card, Ricky Simone versus Cameron Smotherman. I actually think this is really good odds for Ricky Simone. He's barely a favorite here. I know he's stepping up, and, you know, Cameron Smotherman lost his last fight, and he's stepping in, and this is a bit of a oddly put-together matchup, but I think Ricky Simone gets this one done very handily. Ricky Simone is very good. Like, there ain't no shame in losing to Mario Batista, as we now find out. Mario Batista is a hell of a fighter in that division. And Ricky Simone has, like, given problems to a lot of top guys. He's come into matchups against other guys that were, you know, out-damaging him in moments. And that's always seemed to be the problem with Ricky Simone, is that fighters seem to sort of out-pepper him at range, and he can't hurt people at range as much. He has power in the pocket, and we just saw him come off a nasty KO win over Javid Basharat, put him out cold in the first round. So he's going to have a ton of momentum here. He also has a really nasty KO over Rafael Assunção, where he pieced him up against the cage and put him away in really impressive fashion. I'm going to go with Ricky Simone here, though, over Cameron Smotherman. Cameron Smotherman, we just watched him lose to Serhiy Sidhi very, very recently, and that was a fight where he did have some... There was some back and forth moments where he took some damage and got a bit scrappy with Serhiy Sidhi, so I'm not sure on the massively quick turnaround. It's not like he had it all within his control like Joshua Van. He lost the fight and got hit pretty frequently in that fight by Serhiy Sidhi as well. I'm going to go with Ricky Simone. Serhiy Sidhi was able to out-grapple him, and Serhiy Sidhi's always a guy where he has grappling, but it's never been his thing. Ricky Simone at least has grappling as an option to go for things, you know, like he'll go out there with a purely grappling minded like his game plan will be entirely grappling focused. So I don't know if this is a fight where Cameron Smotherman should be taking it on such unprepared circumstances. I trust in Ricky Simone's fundamentals to carry him through a not so prepared fight camp, compared to Cameron Smotherman's credentials carrying him through a not-so-prepared fight camp. If this was Cameron Smotherman with some momentum, that had a full training camp to deal with what Ricky Simone brings to the table, maybe I'd think a little bit otherwise, but I think this is good odds on Ricky Simone, and I'm going to take Ricky Simone to win this fight. Maybe a decision, 29-28, third round, looking good for Cameron Smotherman, but with Smotherman, I just feel like he gets smothered a bit too much early, and that's no pun intended, but I think he takes a little while to get going sometimes, and when you're against someone who can mix it up, you don't want to be getting going on the feet and in the grappling against someone who can do both against you. So I'm going to go with Ricky Simone getting this one done. We move on. Up the card, Cody Durden versus Jose Ochoa. Jose Ochoa's really good, and I'm going to take him to win. And it's fucking... Am I going to take him to... Like, dude, he looked really good against Lona Kavanagh, and he should not have looked that good against him. He should not have looked that good against Lona Kavanagh. He looked really good, and he had really good finishes as well. And with Cody Durden, the problem that I have with him is that he's very tough, very durable, pushes an amazing pace as well. But Jose Ochoa is such a finisher, and he had a real good fight with Lona Kavanagh, who I think is probably the future of the flyweight division. And Jose Ochoa is actually the favorite here. I think that Cody Durden has always had a problem with someone who's composed, well-rounded, and also has some like sting and pain in their shots. Durden can hurt opponents too, and he has done before. He's had volume moments and really poured it on certain opponents with his grappling as well. But with Jose Ochoa, he just seems like a latch him up out of nowhere type of fighter when it comes to finishing potential and submission ability as well. I'm going to go with Jose Ochoa. I think he even had Lona Kavanagh hurt to the body in their fight as well. And I thought that was incredibly impressive. And I don't think he took that in his ideal circumstances. I'm pretty sure that was some kind of like mix and matched, put together matchup for him in his debut. So I'm going to go with Jose Ochoa here. There is some good value on Cody Durden as an underdog because we don't know too much about Ochoa yet. But from what I've seen, the guy's just a really nasty finisher and he makes quick work of people. And if it wasn't for the Lona Kavanagh fight and this was just a 7-0 guy with a lot of finishes on the regional scene, I'd say Durden will probably give him a lot of things to worry about. And this might be an experience wins type of fight where Durden goes out there and puts his game on Jose Ochoa. But with Jose Ochoa's performance against Lona Kavanagh, it was the perfect performance for a young prospect where you showed you're really good because you matched up with a really good prospect yourself and had a really close fight with him. But also, you learn appropriately where you can tweak a few things and see that there's a level that you need to get to and you're so close to it. It wasn't like a demoralizing loss where he got chinned and who knows if he'll take punishment the same way or if he got completely ragdolled. You know, it's a different situation. So I'm going to go with Cody Durden losing. I'm going to say that Jose Ochoa is going to go out there and get a finish at some point. I could even see a body shot finish, like a kick to the body from Jose Ochoa, hurting Cody Durden and putting him down. And then maybe Durden goes in for a bad takedown attempt and something in terms of a finish happens from there. So I'm going to go with Jose Ochoa getting this one done, hurt him with strikes, and then go for a submission afterwards is what I'm going to say Jose Ochoa does here. So I'm taking Ochoa by finish in the first 2 rounds. We move on. Malcolm Wellmaker versus Kris Moutinho. So I'm going with Malcolm Wellmaker. I've been talking about Malcolm Wellmaker for a long time. You know, you guys know I'm boys with Cameron Simon, and I even picked Malcolm Wellmaker to beat Simon. I said he would land that shot, that counter hook, as Simon came in the first round, and I've never been so sad to be so right in my life. I've been paying attention to Malcolm Wellmaker for a while now. I remember he had a fight, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was having fights on Masvidal's Icon Fight League, I think. So there's actually some hidden experience there because I think those go down as exhibition matches. But Malcolm Wellmaker, really nasty power, really good sprawls. He's very athletic. So I think even if he doesn't have the intricacies of the grappling down, and maybe someone eventually will out-grapple him, and maybe someone with real striking skill will be able to outstrike him with some kind of background. I think until then, he can make up the difference with his raw potential and ability. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Wellmaker. He outsizes Moutinho quite a bit here. He's a tall flyweight or a tall bantamweight, 5'10", probably 5'9". And yeah, he's just got too much on Moutinho. Moutinho's beat some guys outside the UFC, and he's durable and he's experienced. And, you know, he got finished by Guido Canetti after losing to Sean O'Malley. Everybody said, what a granite chin. And then Guido Canetti put some hooks on his chin and really badly hurt him. And you know what I'm thinking? And I should have learned this a long time ago about Sean O'Malley. O'Malley is a puncher whose power comes from straight punches. You know, when you look at a lot of O'Malley's wins, and I know when he catches someone falling into his punch, his power can be amplified when he caught that hook on, Aljamain Sterling. But it's not... O'Malley's power doesn't come from, his whip, you know? It comes from, all effort, straight punches, 1-2 down the pipe. Catches Eddie Wineland, puts him away. And even against Kris Moutinho, you saw in that fight that he was doing a lot of punching straight to the face of Moutinho, which is why all the memes of Moutinho getting hit in the face over and over again come from. Because he just having his head popped back the whole fight by straight punches. O'Malley doesn't really and I think this is why Moraes was able to hurt Merab and why Henry Cejudo was able to hurt Merab, but not O'Malley, is because those guys were landing hooks, proper step in, find the angle, turn it over, and land a really powerful hook on Merab. And that's why Moraes and Cejudo had Merab in some level of trouble in their fight. But with Sean O'Malley, he doesn't seem to have that in the pocket, punish you with a really nasty hook, unless he already has you hurt with a straight punch. Like, I know he teed off against Howley and Paver up against the cage, but it was a straight punch that did it, an overhand right that did it. Like, I'm not saying it's entirely a straight punch, but you know what I mean? It's not that quickly tucked over Alex Pereira lead hook that Malcolm Wellmaker seems to have. And I think with Kris Moutinho, the way that he defends strikes is by eating them where he chooses to. Like, you're not going to catch Moutinho out of position with a big punch. And if you do, that's when a guy like Guido Canetti is going to be able to finish him. But when a guy like Sean O'Malley can't finish Kris Moutinho, it's because he's fully at peace, knowing that it's not going to shock him that he's been hit by something. Like, I'm going in with my hands high and my head and my chin tucked. I'm not going to get shocked by a 1-2 down the pipe. And that's why he was able to take so much damage against O'Malley. I think with Moutinho, some of the times when he goes forward with combinations, he's so slow with it and unathletic. I think Malcolm Wellmaker's going to catch him with a counter hook and put him away in the first round. I'm going to go with another Malcolm Wellmaker first round KO. I think this is an absolute mismatch. I wish my boy Cameron Simon could have got matchups like this, but no, they just find a certain fighter that they like, and this is what they're going to do. They're going to give him Kris Moutinho. I was thinking Wellmaker, after dusting up Simon like that, should have been looking at some like Basharats or some actual solid good names in the division. But Kris Moutinho is good, but even though he's worked his way back to the UFC, his record's 9-6. And I don't know if they've updated that record. They can't have updated that record. But I just feel like Moutinho still isn't all that. And he's accepted this fight, and this is the fight that they've given him to get into the UFC with. And I think this is going to be a first round KO from Wellmaker. And I said exactly why. The straight punches are something Moutinho can deal with, because he doesn't have to be like, it's a chin thing. You know what I mean? But sometimes avoiding getting chinned or taking shots well is also a reaction time thing, and adjusting to different angles that the punches are coming from. And I think that Wellmaker has a really good way of delivering shots that you aren't going to see until they've spanned your jaw around. O'Malley hurts people and finishes them, but he pops their head back, wobbles them, and then he's on them with his combination finish. But when it comes to really putting out a bantamweight fighter or a lower weight class fighter, you got to spin the tip of their jaw. And I think Wellmaker does a really good job of that. So I'm going to take him to beat Kris Moutinho. First round KO. We move on. Up the card, Michael Chiesa versus Court McGee. I'm going to take Michael Chiesa. I'm going to take Michael Chiesa to win this fight by submission. I don't know who Michael Chiesa has been nice to behind the scenes in the UFC to be getting all of these types of matchups when it comes to Max Griffin and now Court McGee as well. I mean, they really are just being like, okay, Michael Chiesa, you can live in this utopia where there's no killers and exist with your career there, while the rest of the division fights absolute killers and they don't get no easy fights. So it's almost like they're just artificially keeping Chiesa's career alive. I hate to say it like that, but it really does feel like that sometimes. And I know he's fought some killers before, and, he's in there with Luque, and, he had an RDA fight, and some other matchups for him as well. I know Sean Brady matchup isn't a walk in the park for him, but it seems of recently in Michael Chiesa's career with his last few, he got Tony Ferguson at welterweight. Nobody wanted that. But Chiesa goes out there, gets a first round sub. Max Griffin. What matchups are we doing? And then Court McGee. Like, dude, Chiesa's just built himself up, in my opinion, as a promoter, to be sacrificed as a known person to someone who's going to knock him the fuck out as a contender coming up the division. But no, it's time for Court McGee to get the Chiesa test. So, I know he works for the analyst desk, but these are really, really tidy matchups for Michael Chiesa, and I reckon he's going to go out there and get a submission win over Court McGee. Now, Court McGee's tricky. People forget, man. Court McGee nearly beat Sean Brady on the come up, okay? Court McGee has had some funny old results in fights, I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, he holds a win over Robert Whittaker, if I'm not mistaken, Court McGee. So he has some sneaky good ones in his career, but I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa getting this one done. And by the fucking looks of things, getting a matchup with Tim Means. I don't know what the UFC matchmakers are doing with Chiesa here, but Chiesa's in fucking Peaches and Creamville, for lack of a better term. And it just is interesting to see. So Michael Chiesa, I reckon, is going to win this fight by submission early in the fight. First or second round, I just think his game of getting a takedown to the back take is just something that you've got to be a young, athletic, explosive fighter to deal with. If you're caught McGee, I don't even know how old he is now, 48 years of age, 45, probably he's probably in his mid-40s. I'm going to go with Chiesa to get this one done by submission over Court McGee. I wouldn't be surprised if Court McGee is genuinely 42 years old, by the way. I don't know. But I'm going to go with Chiesa by submission here. We move on. Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato. I'm going to go with Rodolfo Bellato. Hurts me to say it because I was a Paul Craig meme supporter for a long time. You know, he's the lineal light heavyweight champ. He is. Paul Craig is genuinely... You're looking at the lineal light heavyweight champion of the UFC. The guy who choked out Ankalaev and submitted him with ease, by the way, did I mention, with absolute ease. And let me tell you about his performance against Jamal Hill. Oof. You think Yuri did good finishing Jamal Hill in the 3rd round? Dude, before Alex Pereira finished Jamal Hill in round 1 at UFC 300, somebody else had already made it cool to do so, okay? Pereira weren't setting no trends. Paul Craig's the real fucking deal. No, I think he's going to lose to Rodolfo Bellato. At light heavyweight, I don't mind his chances a little bit more because they are a lot more sluggish. So even if he's a little bit under-weaponed on the feet, Paul Craig, when it comes to what he can do to his opponents, he can still have these, you know, he can anticipate shots a little better. They're not going to be a shock to him. There's not going to be some fast, athletic middleweight that really should be a welterweight that just fucking pops one on his chin without him seeing it. Like, he'll see the shortcomings a lot more, but he's been hit so many times, and not being able to beat Bo Nickel in hindsight was to me a bit like, well, Bo Nickel's good enough to keep it cool and composed against Paul Craig at the time. But when I look back at it, I think you had no way of putting any level of, like, MMA offense on Bo Nickel for 3 straight rounds, other than kicking at his arms. You genuinely had no way of getting to Bo Nickel with boxing. You had no way of, like, shooting into a position where you could win in the exchange against the cage, against the... I can't go with Paul Craig. It just sometimes I watch him in fights and I'm like, where is the offensive intent? Where is your way of getting to what you want to do? It just seems to be like he's on the back foot too much. And sometimes it works and he can latch up someone's leg. But I think with Rodolfo Bellato, even though he pulled out the first fight with a herp, which is an interesting reason to pull out, I reckon Rodolfo Bellato is going to win this one. He's been working with Luke Rockhold in the grappling, so that's a really good training partner to have for Paul Craig when it comes to, like, some, you know, getting you in some bad positions, like Luke Rockhold. Luke Rockhold will roll his way for a leg, and he has really good entanglements there, and his jiu-jitsu level is really good in his jiu-jitsu game for MMA, so I think that's a really good training partner for Rodolfo Bellato. And with Paul Craig, it just comes to down to I don't trust his chin, I don't like him when he's outsized, and if you're not dumb and don't shoot onto top position against him like Nikita Krylov, who was still beating the shit out of him before getting caught in a triangle there, you should be all right. I reckon Rodolfo Bellato is going to be absolutely fine on the feet and likely get a first-round TKO win against Paul Craig to finish the fight in the first round. We move on. Up the card to another fight, Alonzo Menifield versus Oumar Sy. I'm going with Oumar Sy. I think he's really good. I think Oumar Sy is very good, and I even mentioned him a while ago. I don't know if this was on a stream or a video or someone was bringing up the topic. I think it was on stream of, like, who are the good prospects in the sport. And I said Oumar Sy is one of the best prospects right now. He's massive for the division. He fights very much like Cyril Gane at light heavyweight. And before you tell me, oh, that's not a good look then because Gane's shit. Gane's still top ranked. Like, he's still a very top level guy. So, and this is Alonzo Menifield we're talking about. So, is there a chance that Alonzo Menifield will catch Oumar Sy and put him out cold? Yes. There's a big chance of that happening. You know, Alonzo Menifield has hurt opponents, had him in trouble, and failed finishes as well because sometimes he gets overzealous. And I do think that Alonzo Menifield has a child's brain. I think he's retarded. If there was an IQ stat on here, I think it would be very, very low level. I mean, he's very... Yay! That's like what you're expecting to hear. And what do you think about that win, Alonzo Menifield? Yay! That's what I feel like I hear out of Alonzo Menifield sometimes. So I think Oumar Sy is going to be a little bit too intricate here. I watched his performance against Daton Young. Very good performance from him. When I was watching it live, I was like, ooh, Daton Young's doing some things. Like, he's landing some good low kicks on Oumar Sy. And he was during that fight, but he kind of went away from them because they weren't having the effect that he needed them to as soon as he did. So I think Oumar Sy is going to win this fight. Very light on his feet, very good striking, and he also has some power as well that I think Jacoby is missing on the back foot. Where with Alonzo, Menifield, Dustin, Jacoby, Menifield can crash in because and Jacoby does have some pop in his shots, but Jacoby's not going to flatline KO you rushing in. You know what I mean? Jacoby will set up a shot and very sneakily land a shot on you that you don't see coming, and all of a sudden you're wobbled. So he does have some pop. But I'm going to go with Oumar. You could just rely on the power of Menifield and say, oh, Menifield's power is too good. But I also think here, which is something that I'm going to add as a factor, is that Menifield will probably try and grapple Oumar, because Oumar will stay out of range of him, and he'll make him miss a little bit without even intending to land his own shots. Oumar this is. And I think that'll lead Menifield to listening to his corner and thinking, I'll mix in some takedowns, and go in there and try and get some double legs and stuff against the cage. And I think that's where Oumar will very easily and athletically escape those positions that were a lot of effort for Alonzo Menifield to get him in. So I think that'll draw some of that power away from Menifield as well. And I think we're going to see Oumar stomping at the leg. This is stuff that Jacoby doesn't do. Jacoby's very good at range, but he's still a kickboxer where damage is damage and you've got to land on your opponent. So Jacoby at range is landing his jab 2 and weaving and looking for a 2 afterwards. And that's where you get caught trying to, pull out in the middle of combinations to land your next shot afterwards. Whereas Oumar is very teep, move, let you throw and let you miss, and he'll stomp your leg and teep again and jab and move. He's a lot more... Jacoby counters and moves and stays elusive so he can punish you, whereas Oumar counters and moves and stays elusive so he can counter and move and stay elusive and not get chinned. And if you give him an opportunity to where he can go for a combination or can pick it up and work on you and even get a dominant position grappling, because Oumar can grapple a little bit as well offensively, as we saw early in his career. And I think in his debut he got a rear naked choke win just by taking a guy down and dominating him. And he has a lot of submissions on his regional career as well. So I'm going to go with Oumar. I think he's got more options than Jacoby that mean that Alonzo Menifield just can't zerg in and go bang and try and land a big shot on him. So I'm going to go Oumar getting this one done by decision. 30-27, 29-28. Maybe he gets dropped in a round and survives. Who knows? We move on. Masur Abdul-Malik versus Cody Brundage. Another one of these matchups where it's just okay, Atlanta, we see what you're doing to the boys. Okay? Masur Abdul-Malik's going to fuck up Cody Brundage. What is this matchmaking? They want that Atlanta cloud roaring, dude. That's what I'm seeing. I think that Masur Abdul-Malik is going to chin Cody Brundage in the first round. He's very, very good, Masur Abdul-Malik. Very, very good prospect. There are moments where I worried about him. When I was watching him grapple, and it was someone who was on the Contender Series with him. I don't think it was Nick Klein. I think it was another person that was on the Contender Series that looked very shit in terms of the way they were fighting. I don't know if they eventually have got a UFC contract or something along those lines. They were supposed to fight someone on short notice. They didn't end up getting the fight, and now they're not in the UFC anymore. But there was a guy that he was fighting on the Contender Series who I thought was so bad and so unathletic and not able to hurt anyone in any way in terms of his power or anything like that. And he still had Masur Abdul-Malik in some really bad grappling exchanges. So there's a part of me that thinks that Cody Brundage could fall into those same grappling exchanges and try and work it. But when I was watching Brundage against Cedric Dumas and a couple scrambles happened and he just tucked up on his knees and did fuck all, and another couple exchanges happened against another opponent that he had when they were grappling and he just ended up tucking up in a ball on the ground, and it was just disgusting to me. So I do want to say that Cody Brundage could win, but then I also noticed that whenever he doesn't get his own way in the grappling and he doesn't get that fabled Cody Brundage guillotine, he tends to just tuck up in a ball and go, oh, difficult, and just tuck up like he did against Cedric Dumas. The guy made Cedric Dumas look like he was a Division I All-American. It was a tough one to watch. So I'm going to have to go with Masur Abdul-Malik. Too powerful, too athletic, too fast, too speedy for what I nearly said. Too fast, too much finishing ability in the first round. I'm going to go with Masur Abdul-Malik. This is going to be a Cody Brundage first round loss where you end up wondering, how's he still on the roster again? Even though secretly he does keep getting wins that don't make any sense. So yeah, he had a win over, but then again, he had a win over who? Julian Marquez. You know what I mean? Some of these names are coming back and I'm like, dude, Julian Marquez was a fucking bottom feeder in 2008. How's he still here? The guy was shit in 2017, and the guy's here like, I'm still shit. 6 years later, like 8 years later, the guy's still around. Like, I don't understand where they find some of the matchups for Cody Brundage, but now they're just feeding him to an actual prospect. I'm going to go with Masur Abdul-Malik getting this one done by TKO. We move on. Cody Garbrandt versus Raoni Barcelos. Now, I'm just going to go with Raoni Barcelos, I think. I think I'm done with Cody, to be honest. He could win. And I can already, you know, Raoni Barcelos had a neck surgery and they put it on incorrectly. They didn't put it back on. They didn't take off his head and put it back on, but they fused his neck in a weird way, so it's like permanently stuck to the side like that. You'll notice it when he fights. I just can't. I can't pick Cody Garbrandt to win a fight anymore. I was thinking of doing it and saying, "Oh my God, Cody Garbrandt!" But dude, did Raoni Barcelos ever finish Dillashaw or ever drop Dillashaw? And yeah, I keep thinking of these moments. Well, did Raoni Barcelos ever like drop Rafael Assunção and flatline KO him? And that was a good win that he had, Rafael Assunção. But Dominic Cruz, like, there's a Dominic Cruz win, but I think at that time, it was a time where Dominic Cruz was, like, set to lose to every single guy that was on the come-up at bantamweight. Like, that Dominic Cruz came back, and I think, you know, the Cejudo fight was the Cejudo fight, but then a split decision Casey Kenny fight that he had, and I just think Garbrandt was never all that. And I ended up picking him against Figueiredo not that long ago, and I was thinking, why, though? Why would I do that? Like, he has power, and you know, Figueiredo's a bit smaller, and I was thinking, well, Garbrandt's still got world-class wrestling defense, but who against? You know, he shocked off a couple takedowns from Dominic Cruz, and Cruz doesn't re-enter on shots and really try and work him up against the cage. There's different ways of wrestling now. It's not all just a blast double leg in the center. You know what I mean? Where you can sprawl it or roll all the way over and tuck over and get out of it. It was just, I really like Cody Garbrandt, and I want him to win. But I don't know if I can trust him to be consistent enough to win fights in the UFC anymore. And to me, it never really came down to injury. It never really came down to, oh, he's not the same anymore since his chin's gone. Like, the guy got flatline KO'd before fighting Dominic Cruz on the regional scene, out cold stiff. Like, he's been chinned and flatlined before, and he's a very powerful guy. I just think that Garbrandt, you know, he was a guy who I believe he beat Thomas Almeida at the time, which was a very good win because Almeida was on a hell of a streak. And then I think he beat Takeya Mizugaki, and I think he got like ranked number 7 or 8 in the division. And then he got his title shot, and it was like, hang on. We don't know where this guy ranks up. He ends up having the performance against Dominic Cruz, which was a great performance. I don't know though, man. I can't pick Garbrandt. I can't logically pick Garbrandt to win a fight in 2025. He just keeps pulling out of fights, and he's injured, and this time he's healthy coming into it, and only to have a pretty iffy performance anyway, you know? And it just seems like Garbrandt's very good at athletic movements when it comes to being fast and when it comes to, like, shucking off immediate takedown attempts. But then when it gets into an actual, like, punch for punch, Garbrandt would win, you know, getting to you before you get to him. Entry on a takedown for entry on a take. Like, if you want to get to Garbrandt's hips, you're not going to get him down immediately straight away with ease. Most of the time out of 10. But then when we actually get into a striking match, or when we get into a grappling match, all of his, like, really bad fundamental flaws just rise to the top. When it comes to giving up his back, when it comes to, like, really bad decision-making in certain grappling exchanges, when both guys are starting to land a little bit on the feet and Garbrandt's doing the same shit over and over again, and he's throwing low kicks while some guy's rushing forward towards him, and he's not even turning over the shin, and that's how he got dropped by Kai Kara France, and it's just too much. There's too much shit to notice, and I know that Raoni Barcelos isn't all that himself, but the guy was dropping around Timur Valiev, should have got a 10-8 round there, like, these are legitimate monsters that Raoni Barcelos has been put up against, and just fraud-checked Peyton Tabet, who again was a very dynamic, fast puncher with a lot of power, and perceivably good takedown defense based on him shucking off a couple attempts off other guys. So I'm going to go with Raoni Barcelos. I'm going to go with Raoni Barcelos tracking his way through and getting either a decision win or a TKO to ground and pound in the second. I just can't pick Garbrandt. I can't pick Garbrandt. And you know what? I'm putting it all on the line to see if Garbrandt can prove me wrong here. I don't think he was the best fighter ever seen for one fight against Dominic Cruz. No, I just think you fought an old Dominic Cruz with tendonitis in both feet, and you got outlanded every single round, but dropped him a few times and did a couple body pop moments. So 12-year-olds are going to think you entered like God mode. And he did. He looked really good in that fight, but I just always think that the Garbrandt thing was massively overrated. And I think that his following career has proven that. So, yeah, I'm daring Garbrandt to make me happy and prove me wrong. I'm going with Jaime Barcelos. We move on. Edmund Shabazian versus Andre Petroski. I'm going to go with Edmund Shabazian. I'm worried about it, though. Andre Petroski, no. This is a really tricky one for me because I do think that Edmund Shabazian is a better MMA fighter than Andre Petroski. He's a better MMA fighter. He's got better technique. He's faster. He's more powerful. His stand-up is way better than Andre Petroski's, and Andre Petroski's been KO'd by an imaginary hip. So it is worrying to consider a Petroski pick, but then again, you've got to think about the style of Petroski is all wrestling, non-stop. Is this going to be a first-round finish for Edmund Shabazian? Because if it's not, he's probably going to get in some bad positions late and get taken down, you know, and have his jiu-jitsu exposed a little bit. So, but then again, Mikel Pereira put him away in the first round, Andre Petroski, and he's been KO'd by someone's hip before that didn't make any sense whatsoever. And even some of his other fights have been very close where he has had to grapple. But Shabazian got finished by Mearshot. He got Mearshotted by Mearshot, and at least Andre Petroski out-toughed it and scrambled with him and got back to top position. And it's a really tricky one to predict, but you know what? I think I'm done with Edmund Shabazian fumbling shit. I'm going to say that Andre Petroski goes out there and actually implements his grappling, and we see Edmund make a ton of mistakes. Am I dumb? Am I dumb for saying that? Is Shabazian just going to be too good for him early on the feet? I feel like Shabazian, you know what? I'm going to go with Edmund Shabazian. I'm going to go Edmund Shabazian. I think he's going to be a little bit too fast. I'm going with Andre Petroski. I'm actually going to go, I don't know what to go with here. Because it's not about who's better. It's not about any of that. Otherwise, I'd just pick Edmund. He's a better martial artist. It's about whose number's going to come up. When is Edmund going to fumble this shit again? And when is Andre Petroski going to get chinned again? Like, it's whose number's up. It's genuinely a coin flip, and it's 50-50 odds, which normally means you should go with the underdog. But I'm going to flip a fucking dental floss. I don't even know what side I said would be what, so it's a wasted flip of something. I'm going to go with... I'll go with Edmund Shabazian. Fuck it. I'm going to go with Edmund Shabazian. I'm going to go with Andre Petroski out wrestling Edmund Shabazian. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with a late rounds arm triangle submission win for Andre Petroski in the third round. We move on. Rose Namajunas versus Miranda Maverick. I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas. She's a much better martial artist. This is a bit of a mismatch. A very big mismatch. Miranda Maverick's quite good at grappling, and she does have some physicality over her opponents at times, but I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas here. She's a much better, well-rounded, technical martial artist. What happened to Rose, man? Jesus, Pat Berry. Genuinely just turned her into a 10-year-old boy. Like, let's just call it what it is. Either way. I'm going to go with Rose. I'm going to go with Rose to win this one in a technical way. And get a decision win over Miranda Maverick. She's got better grappling defense. I don't think she's going to be completely out-scrambled here and out-grappled and out-physicality'd by Miranda Maverick. It could happen, but just Rose Namajunas, you know, she broke her hand and probably was on her way to beating Manon Fiorot before Shevchenko won her razor-close decision against Manon Fiorot. So I'm going to side with Rose Namajunas being a much more technical fighter than Miranda Maverick and being much better in general at stand-up and Miranda Maverick's good, but Rose is still like she's got a size to her at flyweight. So I'm going to say that Rose Namajunas wins. I'm going to say that Rose Namajunas wins this fight by a unanimous decision. 30-27, Rose just outdoes Miranda Maverick everywhere and coasts while slightly ahead of her opponent for the majority of it. So I'm going to go with Rose Namajunas to get the job done. We move on. Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. I'm going with Joaquin Buckley over Kamaru Usman. I'm going with Joaquin Buckley. He's a big favorite here. There's value on Usman there. There just is. I'm not counting out Usman because you know what it is? There comes a point in this fight where I'm concerned for my Buckley pick, where I feel like if Buckley is just like getting the better of Usman and not finishing him for too long, I have this sense that for some reason it will awaken something in Usman. Like, oh yeah, I'm a fighter. This is what I do. Oh yeah, I'm in this shit. You know what I mean? And he'll start just going to like an autopilot win fight mode. I hate to say this because it might be the most casual thing I've ever said. But when you're a momentum-based fighter like Usman, and you can get momentum over all of your opponents, and then every one of Usman's opponents eventually is fighting from behind. They're either trying to take him out in the first round, or they're fighting from behind in the fight. Covington ended up doing it in their fight. And then Woodley was constantly fighting from behind and trying to sort of get the win back for himself and get a round back for himself. He's always on the back foot. You're always down on the scorecards or down in the round against Kamaru Usman, typically. Even Edwards before the head kick in the second fight that they had, over the three fights that they had when Edwards head kicked him. I just feel like with Usman, sometimes when you get that streak of constantly being ahead snapped, and Edwards starts doing good early against you, and then Chimaev has a really good first round against you, and don't get it twisted, Usman brought back the second and third. I thought that fight was a draw if you're giving a very generous 10-8 in the first round to Chimaev, which was one of the weakest 10-8 rounds given in recent UFC history. I still think it was a dominant round though, and 10-8 can be argued. But there's a world where Usman wins that fight 29-28 if like different judges are there and we're not in Abu Dhabi. I swear to God there is. But when you've had that much time where you haven't been the guy just dictating it all, and I think that it's been something like 1,000 or so days since Usman's last win, I just feel like he's going to start behind. He's going to start this fight being behind. And sometimes you forget how to win. Sometimes you forget how to win where Usman's constantly ahead, and then you're fighting in this like vacuum of I'm ahead of this person. They have to do everything to get it back from me, and they're overswinging and they're breathing heavier, and they've had a round where they've been on bottom position and I'm ahead, and it kind of sets him in this place of being a winner. And then when you start out really bad, it's a lot more difficult to overcome that now because you weren't used to just giving away 2 rounds and having to claw back a victory, and this round goes against you, and that he was so dominant that he almost doesn't know what it's like to struggle in these trenches of the MMA world. You know what I mean? Where you've been through some tough rounds and it gets into a scrap and it's not on your terms where you're ahead and you can exit the exchange at any time. And I feel that's what's going to happen here with Buckley. I think Buckley will get ahead and stay ahead. Just with more output, more volume. And Usman will be there trying to throw straight punches that look good and stay within his stance. And I just think it's going to be a thing where Buckley is just going to be out there moving around, scooting around side to side, Usman trying to track him down. And I think we could see like a more kick-heavy Mario Batista against Patchy Mix type fight here, where we're seeing a bit of a stiff Usman. His knees are cooked, didn't even need to mention it. But I think we're going to see Buckley lead low kick, move. He's up by a strike, stomp to Usman's lead leg while Usman misses a punch. Buckley moves, looks in for a big head kick and Usman blocks it. And then Buckley lands a punch on Usman on the other side. And he's kind of like, oh, fuck. I thought I blocked that one, got hit by that. I just think we're going to see Buckley very loosely and calmly and almost nonchalantly, like, get his way ahead in the first 2, and then we're going to see Usman start to try and be a bit more physical, and I think that's where Buckley's going to win. I don't see him getting out physicaled by Usman, and that's something that Usman had over a lot of his opponents when it came to out physicalitying them, pushing Covington around-ish. He didn't really do it, but he could have done, he had that in the back pocket. Like, If push comes to shove, I'm stronger than this guy against the cage. I'm stronger than him. When it comes to Masvidal, I'm just stronger than this guy. Even when it comes to Leon Edwards, if push comes to shove, I'm stronger than this guy up against the cage. And I can work that physical part of the game and really muscle him around. And he had that on all of his opponents. I don't think he has it against Buckley here. He doesn't have that to fall back on. And I don't think he'll get ahead in the first place to start playing that cruise control Usman game where, you know, I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley. I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley getting this done. Usman does the same things. And when you're ahead, you can do the same things because they're working for you. You know? But Usman's not... If Usman's Usmaning, which is the 1-2 and maybe a little front kick to the body now and again and a jab low to the body, if he starts doing that, and it starts not working, which I don't think it will against Buckley because of how much he moves around the outside and switches stances and feints. Big head kick, move out, low kick on the outside. You know, Buckley fights at a 5'10" frame as if he's 6'2" for the division and Ian Gary. You know what I mean? The way he moves around and switches stances and low kick and then move. And I just think it's too much for Usman paired with Buckley's physicality and punch power. I'm actually going to say that Buckley finishes this fight in the 3rd or 4th round. I'm going to say that Buckley finishes this by 4th round TKO against Usman. And it'll be a round 1 where Buckley's slightly ahead. Usman comes alive in the last moment and people go, oh, there he is. And then round 2, Buckley will be ahead again and Usman will be more in the fight. And then round 3, Buckley will start hurting Usman and Usman will start failing some takedowns and Buckley will start landing on the break and may even end up on top for a second in a scramble. And I think we're just going to see Buckley start to pick it up as it goes on. 3rd round will be a very dominant round for Buckley where he wobbles Usman a few times. And then 4th round, I think he'll just start teeing off on Usman. And I just don't think we're going to see the same Usman anymore. I don't think we're going to see the same Usman able to just stand his base against Covington because Covington doesn't have that pop and that movement and that forward like athleticism and momentum in his fights. And Usman can stand his ground against so many opponents. But I think Buckley will be one of the first fighters that actually has Usman like scooting around on the back foot a bit. And I don't think that's good for his knees. I'm going to go 4th round TKO for Joaquin Buckley getting this one done in Atlanta. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.